All right, so I'm going to get started. My name is Jayla Sandoval. I am co-founder of Cafe Cultura, also a multimedia personality, bilingual. Um, a little bit about me is that I am Costa Rican Salvadorian, was born in New York and in Long Island, New York. So shout out to anybody in Long Island, and raised in South Florida. But my curiosity and love for New York City took me back as an adult. So I was raised here, went through high school, did college, went to FIU, and then I took my adult life, which turned my regular career into, which was early childhood education, into media. Went into media and left to New York, started at Univision Radio overnights, walking in the snow. And then that turned into my dream job, which was doing 11 to 3 with Alex Sensation at La Mega, which is probably the biggest station in the nation, in any language. They kind of beat out even like Elvis Duran. So it was, I kind of made my dream come true in a sense of, that was what I said I wanted to do, be at the biggest station, at the best time, at the best market, which was New York City. And I made it happen, which was really exciting. To me, though, I didn't think I had accomplished enough, which is something definitely that is part of my Latina roots. I'm very stubborn, like to take the hard road, but it's definitely something that has shaped my career and kind of led me to where I'm at now. I do take risks. I think now that I'm a mom, I take a little bit safer risks. I kind of plotted out for a lot longer than before, where I'd be like, the worst that could happen is I'll be back where I'm at right now, and it's not that bad. So did radio mostly was the focus, did a little TV here and there. I was on a show for Revlon Hearst magazine with Laverne Cox. It was a competition. Of course, I was the only Latina on the competition, which was great. I also, my team at the time, was the first Latina ever in the Apollo Theater to do an educational Latin panel with BMI. So that for me was such a huge honor and highlight in my career. Radio's always, anything media, I believe, radio, TV, modeling, did a little modeling too. Um, Doing all those things really bring an uncertainty because it's by job mostly. So, when things started changing in the industry and we used to have to use more tech, now we weren't just able to go on air, get some news maybe online and share it. No, now we had to run our own Instagrams, our own TikToks. We had to run the stations, social media when we were on air. So it became like very different, which was interesting at the time because it happened really, really quick. I started at the old school kind of end of radio. I was like one of the last ones in to where you still saw vinyls at the stations and you still saw like cassettes, and they had to do it a certain way with the studios, which, and then you started seeing the little technology changes throughout, and if you had to kind of figure a way, either you kept up or you had somebody on your team that kept up for you, which is really, really different because media, you just don't tend, especially as talent, you tend to have everything as kind of you just grab the mic and go. But at that time, it was developing so much that we had to be our own producers. We had to be our own talent, even though if we had a team or not, you still had to figure out how to take it that one notch up. So I worked throughout, New York, different markets like New York, Orlando, um, obviously South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and just really, I loved what I did. Finally got my dream job October 19th of 2023. It was a perfect schedule. I mean, 2019, it was a perfect schedule for a mom. Got to drop off my daughter. My schedule was 2 to 7 in the afternoons at a bilingual station for Univision, which was one of the very first to have a bilingual old adult contemporary station. So it was like, imagine just listening to John Cicada and listening to Aerosmith on the same station. So, I had to play a lot with my old school music. And gracias a Dios, my dad, who was always very big into music. My first station was in 80s, 90s to today at 18 years old. Everybody's like, how do you know all of this? I'm like, my dad, like, I loved music. And for me, I know I had to do radio. I knew I had to do radio just because I cannot sing and I cannot play any instruments, but I desperately loved music and I wanted to find a way to give that to the world, like use my voice in some way. Never thought it would lead me to the places that it did, working with everybody from J Balvin, seeing him come up, Nicky Jam, Plan B, all the old school, Tego Calderon, all the old school Romeo, like everybody just got the chance to see the ones who've now become superstars and start. And the people who at that time were just like, Mark Anthony, like everything. So it was an amazing time in that part. And then getting my dream job finally, New York, Univision, me and my daughter had to just cross the bridge. We had a nice place in the Heights. And, then this thing changed our lives, which was the pandemic and COVID. And that was one of the biggest life changers for me. At the time, radio was already having issues. Like, was that continuous media, or was that one of the new medias that was going to die out because of all the streaming and Spotify and YouTube and all of those things? And they kept having to try how to okay, how do we level up? How do we become something different? How do we share all of this? And, thanks to my parents, I think that I'm really good at adjusting and definitely really good at estar inventando, like my dad would say. It did come in handy. I now that I have a kid, I understand what he meant by, siempre pasas, inventando cosas. Like, now that's led me into my business and skills that, I can do that. I can do all of that and use my skills and do all of that to figure it out. So like I said, in my radio career, to me, I've always also wanted to use my voice as a Latina and a very underrepresented Latina. Being a background of Costa Rican, Salvadorian, I never really found, even in New York, like huge communities like you hear about with Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Colombians, and luckily my family's all half. So they're Costa Rican Mexican, Costa Rican Colombian, Costa Rican, we all have our halves, Ecuadorian. We have all of those mixes in me. So like with my family being that way, I understood. My mom is one of 8 on the Salvadorian side. So, we did grow up, unfortunately, being called Mara Salvatrucha and all of that, which doesn't help. So it was like, I was super proud of being Costa Rican, but I had to be careful with who I spoke to, or certain like business things, even where, especially New York, where you said you were Salvadorian, they kind of put you in some category, like, is this person safe to be around? And obviamente, not all Salvadorians are the same. And all I wanted to do was share the pupusas. And that changed a lot. Luckily, I'm still trying to use my voice to make sure that those underrepresented cultures, especially within Central America, our voices keep coming out, keep showing the world, we have somebody, we have a designer, a writer, a tech founder, like all of these things. I remember, you say, okay, who's from DR or who's from Puerto Rico? You could come up with artists, poets, singer, like anything, you name it, and you could think of it, and you ask in El Salvador what that is, or in Costa Rica what that is, and you really got to kind of sit back and think about it, because it's not really like, for us, I remember the only real celebrity that was Costa Rican was Maribel Guardia. And for my time being, I always thought she was Mexican, because the way she represented herself. So it's been an interesting journey that obviously led October 2019, and went to Costa Rica. When I got back on March 6th, I came back to the big surprise of COVID, and the pandemic hit, and I was in New York City by myself for 90 days. That really was like really, really different. It was terrifying, being alone in that situation, 90 days, being away from your family, not, um, the uncertainty of everything. I remember being a kid looking into textbooks and history books and saying, man, I hope we never live anything like this. And realistically, we made it into history books that our kids and grandkids and other people are going to see, that what we went through, what that time was like. You'll hear stories from different people. And it really was life changing for so many people, including myself. Um, Again, I'm a little masoquista. I'm a little stubborn. So I have had a very close, been lucky to have my co-founder who we met before working together. He used to run a startup called Ticket DM. They would do tickets to Ultra and all these really big, huge events. So we worked together. We reconnected. We went to high school together. And then we started working on that project. And then during COVID, he was like, "Oh, you should really get into tech. You should, it's what's, going to be stable, like always." And he's sure, like, that's right. It's going to be a place because there's so many areas in it. And that's something I quickly discovered with the beginning of the transition in, where there's so many like holes almost, where it's like, yeah, there's the tech world, but there's so many tech components that it's like there's so much space that still needs to, like, where we need to build that community, build that help, really unite and continue spreading the word, especially, for people of color, people who are underrepresented. It's been so important. And for me, really life changing. Tech has really brought me into a space where it wasn't like multimedia and in the sense of so much gatekeeping, and a lot more community. It was very welcoming, which to me was one of the most important parts, that, and especially in a place where I felt a lot of um, imposter syndrome, saying, "Oh, I'm a founder." It took me a long time to say the words, "I'm a founder," because that imposter syndrome was really hitting. Because it was like, yeah, I work in tech, but I do this side and I'm doing this. So we found ways to use my skills in media and entertainment. Whether it was connecting, I already knew how to work, with sponsors and partnerships through the stations and, artists. And so those skills really helped me on what it is now that we need for our company, Cafe Cultura, booking different talent, looking at talent. Really, for me, one of the things I focus on a lot is, because we do want to give a voice to the underrepresented communities, that I am genuine with the people and intentional with the people that I work with. I think that's really important, because most people, especially through this era that we've gone through with social media, it was all about following and how many numbers and, all of that. And for me, somebody who's been in the industry for over 15 years, and I have seen the trends when we first didn't have computers, and then we did, and we did the flip phones, and, seeing the way of how technology really, for myself, for my family, how they communicate with us now, seeing them use their phones and take selfies. I didn't think ever would happen, but, they're on trips and they're taking selfies. They're over here, and, my dad tries to fix everything. So like, todo eso has really changed how tech and everything, at least in my life, really changed. Um, Fast forward, we had Cafe Cultura, which came from, the name of it is not cafe, like a coffee shop. I don't actually drink coffee. I'm a horrible Central American. I don't drink any coffee, but the cafe and Cafe Cultura is an homage to all the internet cafes that I had to go through when I was a teenager in Costa Rica and El Salvador. And I wanted to talk to my friends back home and little things like that, where I would run to my AIM account and just like, okay, what's going on? What am I missing over there? Oh my God, I just went here. And you'd have to go pay cash and get quarters and be able to sit on that plastic chair with all those computers and all, different people from around the world just trying to connect using the internet. So that's why I named it, we named it Cafe Cultura, because we really wanted it to be about that culture, about all the Latinos that really don't have much of a voice or don't know how to use their voice. That's something that, my skills with Cafe Cultura that we've been working on, is a different type of like using those skills to bring people in tech and elevate them into the next steps. Today we actually launched, and you could check it out on Instagram, Cafe Cultura _MIA. We launched a couple of fun new products to help founders and people who, have the right idea, just don't know how to take it to the next step. I know how terrifying it is. I know, sometimes you just have questions. Sometimes you want reassurance. So we launched a product school. We also have some consulting, so helping founders with pitches and, presenting. I go and I do diction and different things with our founders that we are working with. And we also just launched Connects, which is going to be an accelerator for Miami Art Week, which we're super excited about. We got things coming up for Afrotech. We have things coming up for Afrotech, and we'll be doing an Afro Latina panel, which I'm really, an Afro Latino Latin panel. So we're really excited about that. And then Miami Art Week, we have a couple of things, but the accelerators really were our hardest to help the community, give people international opportunities, which is something that's really huge too right now. And, we've done before just fundraising. We've done events and activations for different brands. And it's been really a wonderful ride. And I'm excited for what's to come in the tech community. I'm so proud to even be a part of this conversation. It's beautiful to see the Latin community ahí todos juntos like we're supposed to be, and uplifting each other, and not like some of our generational cycles where it's like we can't help this and this country's supposed to hate this country. I love that I'm seeing so much people and so many people connecting in different ways. So we got to keep doing that. I want to thank Techqueria for being one of those community builders that really love to connect and resonate with the people that they work with. It's really amazing. I guess I'll leave it. I have a couple minutes, so I guess I'll leave it to some questions and answers. We'll do a little Q&A. Joelle says, I feel that and resonate, Jayla. Being a part of tech communities has been life-changing for me in the sense of unapologetically sharing my strengths in a humble way. Absolutely. That is so big in this community. And I love it. I love working and meeting so many different people. It really, it kind of fulfills that need. Everybody's like, don't you miss radio? And I do miss radio. But the way that it is now compared to where it was, and the freedom, flexibility that I have in the sense of, okay, I can work from home, or I could work, on my daughter while I'm at PTA doing something for my daughter's school, and seeing how tech also is just taking off on so many sectors, in education, medical, gaming. And we have so many of those verticals that we work with, that seeing the ideas, talking to the different founders is really exciting. It brings that coat, that like magic pixie dust, that we know that bigger and better things are coming. So I'm really excited about that. What has been one of my most favorite activations that we've done? Oof. Hmm. There been a few. I mean, we did the World Cup startup. Um, in my career, like activations, because I've worked a lot of activations through my life. No, in tech, honestly, one of the things that really changed how I viewed a lot in tech was Afro tech and doing the big events and being going to it as a person that was in media versus where I'm at as a founder. So the difference is it's a lot, but in a great way. So I think when I went to Afrotech in Austin last year, that blew my mind, seeing like the events and how they worked and how people were networking. Shout out to Toasted Life, like just all of that. Like it was incredible to see that. And I've been to a couple, obviously, I'm not gonna lie, we need this to be in person. I need to see you guys. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, we've done mixers and Brickle with Citizen M. We've done so many things. And I think it's just, every event really is different because I've just done some women panels where it's just us and they're incredible. But that's a different, deeper type of conversation. So I think for me, it's really the mixers when we get that chance to really do Cafe Cultura mixers. It's fun, everybody has such a good time, everybody connects, and you kind of build your little tribe. When you're going to the next tech event and you see everybody there and, they're going back and forth with ideas and everybody wants to still kind of keep in touch. So building that community from the activations has been super important to what is the foundation of Cafe Cultura. It could be whatever. Corrine, your perspective aligns with mine, Jayla, for sure. When one of us wins, we all do. Yep. And absolutely pay it forward, bring others with you, regardless, not really asking for anything. I think that, I mean, I know common sense isn't common nowadays, but it's definitely something important. Um, even as simple as when you add somebody to an email, you connect somebody, like the little connections. Hey, I can't work with this person, but let's work on it. Or here's the contact. I thought you'd be perfect. We have a lot of those instances happen to us, and we've just really, like I said, we are very intentional on who we work with and who we want to bring up with us. In the sense of these have also been people that have gone through things we've had to go through, the no's, the what are you talking about, the like going through different channels to finally get there. And I'm glad that we're in a space where we can now share those channels, those accelerators, the mentorship, just figuring out and building what is your company as a founder. How did I work past imposter syndrome, and do I face it today? Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie, like even coming on here and doing this talk, I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't mess it up, because my talks are different than, tech, all the tech real talk. So I always feel like sometimes like they're gonna look at me and they're like, oh, this girl, like she's a media kid. What is she doing in tech? And I've really had to work past that imposter syndrome and hone my powers, because the more I hone my power and my skills and believe in myself, the more I'm free to be creative and to really put a foot in the work that I'm doing, in the sense of like, okay, I'm going like high level, like let's take it to that step. Like I'm ready. So sometimes I use that fuel and I try to just come up like, even if it's not ideas that'll happen now, that'll happen, in 4 5 years or next year even. We've been blessed that that's happened to me, obviously going to Afro Tech and going to certain places where I still, get that like, is she really in tech look? Um, so I've really used that to say, you know what, next year I want to come to this, but I want to be on the other side. I want to have our own event. I want to like scale this, bring these like people. And that's helped my imposter syndrome a lot because I get to, being a founder, focus on things that I care about as well. Oh, thank you. Oh, I really appreciate that, Corinne. Alejandra, it was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. What are some of the voices you most admire in tech or the community, Latin community in general? How do you think tech is changing the types of voices today? Um, there's a few that I really like look up to, some that I've worked with, which is great. I think that it's hard to really just, I'm not one to be like, oh, this is my favorite and that's it. If only this person. But there's definitely different ones, different women in tech, especially Latinas in tech, that I admire for just the way they work, the way that they carry themselves, and in the business aspect. I think as a woman, sometimes people tend to, especially when you're walking in with a co-founder who's a male, they tend to kind of look at you as like, hi, like a pat you in your head. And they're kind of like, they let the males take the power. So I try to use my voice a little bit more to make sure that it's an even playing field for everybody. That, just because I have a male co-founder doesn't mean that he's any less or I'm any less than he is. And that's something, Zachary and I have worked together on building, and pushing each other at that, like, because we also can't just say it to each other. We have to take the action, right? So when it's a simple thing as we get to a meeting and they only introduce themselves to that, and we know the structure. I give the look and it's like, hi, I'm Jayla. I'm also a co-founder. And oh, I'm so sorry. You get to that place. So it's, you could respectfully do those things. But you own it. You definitely have to own it. That's something that took me a minute to do because I'd be like, oh yeah, I work at Cafe Cultura. And they're like, you're a founder. And I'm like, oh yeah. So definitely something I worked on for imposter syndrome and all of that. And then for the community, you know, it's definitely changing the type of voices. And I think that is, I know my time is almost up, so I'll answer this last question. Um, it's definitely changing the type of voices. I think that one of the things that it is doing is making people who have the products, all the founders who work behind the scenes, to give them their voice and feel comfortable doing it in their way. It's no perfect wrong or right way, but there's just like a little bit of a essence, like a poquito de sazon that you have to put in so you're able to voice it. And at the same time, you don't have to be the face. But you could still own your part of it. So when you want to talk about it, when you have to explain it, you can do it. So nobody talks about you or messes with your beauty, your idea, your baby, essentially. That's what you created. So why can't you be the voice of your own creation or your own piece of that creation? And that's something that I think we need to continue working on. But that's how I think some of the voices are going to change for sure. The people are going to come out who you probably would have never thought and be like, oh, look, they're speaking, like that's crazy. So it's amazing. But I want to say thank you because I know the career fair just started. Thank you guys so much. Un gran abrazo. Gracias a todos por tenerme aquí, especially Techqueria. I'll see you guys soon. If you want to follow me on social media, on LinkedIn, I put it's on my page, the profile. It's all of it is at I am Jayla, double I. So at IIAMJAYLAH. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be speaking at another event soon or coming to a city near you guys so we can have more of these conversations and raise more awareness for our community. Gracias.